Hello and welcome to East Mojo. You're with me, your host Karma Paljor, on another incredible journey on our show, Calling Home, where we speak to our diaspora from across the world. And these are people who've made an impact, who've made a name for themselves, and this is our way of introducing them to you, tell you their stories, their journeys from their home to where they are currently. And today I would like to introduce to you Manish Chhetri. He was born and raised in Sikkim. Now, what is interesting, and some stories have already been done on him, is that he leads a technical team working on COVID income relief payment at the ministry or in Auckland, New Zealand, that's the government there. The project was set up to provide direct cash benefits to individuals who lost their jobs due to coronavirus. Previously, he worked at companies like Netkraft, Qwest telecom, and Curam software. He also worked in North Carolina in the US, where he led a IT team to build an integral part of a welfare program called Medicaid. Today, we'll trace his journey from Sikkim to New Zealand and learn about his efforts at rebuilding the Kiwi economy post-COVID-19 pandemic. Manish, thank you so much. And as I say, two Sikkimese lads are ready to speak. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Karma, for having me in the show. Thank you so much.
Manish, it's a very interesting journey you've had. You just told me that you just moved to New Zealand in January. And as you moved, you were, I guess, you hit the ground running and got into a very interesting project. You have a BTech degree from Sikkim Manipal University, and then you worked for some of the big tech companies. What decided for you to get into projects where you harness tech to create social good?
So basically, this just happened. It was more of a gut feeling. So I think this was way back in 2007 when I was in Bangalore. So like all tech people do, they like to have multiple job offers when they look around for jobs. So I had a job offer from Oracle, and I had another job offer from a company called Curam. And Oracle, like we all know, leads with the DB, but this other job offer was in a very interesting space, which was related to the social enterprise management space. So that is mostly to do with government benefits. And that was something very new, at least to me at that point of time. Because in India, government benefits doesn't have a huge IT system in place. But looking at the other, like what was presented to me at that point by the HR and the other folks in the company, it looked like a very interesting space. And that's when I got into a company called Curam, who mostly deal in this space, in the social enterprise management space, which mostly deals with the government benefit system. And they work across like in the UK, and they have benefit systems in the US, in Canada, in Brazil, in Germany, in New Zealand, and Australia. So that's when I started.
And how has your experience been? Because New Zealand is one of the countries which got COVID free. And the project you worked on is also very interesting, giving direct cash benefits. But since the population is small, was it challenging?
So firstly, to talk about the project. So I actually just moved to New Zealand in January, like you said. So I joined here because they were starting a new vertical in Auckland. They were trying to build up a new team and a new talent pool in Auckland. So I joined here to help build that talent pool and to build that unit. So I started off, I was working on a modernization project. Basically, there were 30 such systems which the ministry wanted to upgrade into a more modern system. So I was working on a prototype for that, but then COVID happened. And at that point, basically the things had moved so quickly. And usually what happens with government projects is the government passes a policy and we have to deliver the project by that time. So the ministry did realize that there were a crunch of resources in their team. So while I was working on this project, they just pulled me and asked me to lead a different team related to this COVID payments. So while leading that team, it was a lot of pressure. And since we were building something on an existing system, the government did have some existing benefit system in place, but when we build something on top of that, we have to ensure that we don't break anything in the existing system. So that is key there. And to understand the existing system, because I just moved in and as leading a team, so I had to make sure that everyone was on the same page and I understood most of the system better than anyone else in the team to reduce any dependencies, to catch any failures that might happen. So it was quite a lot of hard work, but I think we got there in the end. And the best part was we got it really without any issues. So that was something new even for me in my IT career, because usually when any system goes live, we always have issues. But this one was surprisingly, it went absolutely smooth. And the challenge due to population, I do not think it counts here, because an IT system can always be grown to handle multiple basically, if I have to compare US and New Zealand, where I work last, in US the projects are built state-wise, but in New Zealand the system is built for an entire country. So I think it's about 5 million population. So actually the population really doesn't come into play here.
Right. And Manish, what are the important learnings, from how New Zealand handled this pandemic and was one of the first countries to get coronavirus free? What are the learnings that we can pick up from New Zealand?
I think there was a great deal of accountability, and the government here, I am absolutely impressed, because every day at 1 p.m. there's a clear communication. The Prime Minister would always come and tell the entire country at 1 p.m. sharp what is going on, the status of the virus, what we should be doing, and what the government next steps are. So everyone was very clear with that. And the other part was, we did read the news about the migrant issues in India, but in New Zealand, of course, it's a smaller country, so cannot compare that. But they were pretty clear that they were given enough time before the lockdown so that everybody gets home. And they were given 1 week before everybody gets home and the lockdown started. So I think that made it a lot more effective.
Was the process, working with the team members there, since you said that you just joined in January,
yes,
and then you hit the ground running?
Yes.
So was it easy to, get the entire team working, see that, they were working together? Was it easy? Because, sometimes it is very difficult to bring teams together.
Yes. So actually, because the situation was so extraordinary, the whole team was pretty pumped up. So that helped a lot. And since everyone was working out of home, there was absolutely no work timings. Work would go on till morning every day. There were no weekends, but everybody put in their effort. So that actually helped. And everyone was very cooperative and everyone wanted to get things done. So that really helped things moving. So it was actually this is the first time I'm seeing such good team effort in any of the projects that I've worked with.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's also talk about your journey now.
Sure.
You were born in Sikkim. You
Yes.
moved to New Zealand, I think, in 2010, and then you spent 8 hours in the US. Now you're
Yes.
back in New Zealand.
Yes.
You've lived in different countries with different cultures and norms. Do you identify with one culture more than the other, or is the Sikkimese inside you, very, very much there?
Yeah, I think in the end we all want to go home. So I wouldn't deny that. In the end, we all want to be home at some point. So actually, we all cannot wait for the lockdown to end, so that we can at least travel home and be there for some time. Because in the end, we always look back what's happening home and we want everybody to be safe. And yeah, that's what we identify with. We don't identify with anything else. Though we can blend in easily here because people are very friendly. But yeah, in the end, we are always son of the soil.
Yeah. So you were in New Zealand first in 2010.
Yes.
Then you spent 8 years in the US. How was your journey in the US? And what made you decide to come back to New Zealand again?
So US has been a very interesting journey. So if I have to start from Bangalore, I was working in Bangalore before I moved to New Zealand, right? So in Bangalore, we were working like really, it is an offshore model, obviously, Bangalore. So we were working on products like really away from the actual end client and the end user. So we did know what work we were doing, but we did not know how exactly the end customer would be using the system, what would be their kind of feedback. So it really helped to actually go outside the country and see how the system was actually being used and talk to the actual business, because a lot of things get lost in translation by the time something is communicated from a different land to India. So there are a lot of bridges in between. So a lot of things get lost in communication. So when I moved to US, they were starting on a new project there too. Again, like US, the Medicaid, the insurance program is one of the most complicated insurance programs in the world. They have a whole lot of policies. They have a whole lot of systems which interact with each other. So that was a challenge in itself, and it was a lot of learning because it was the biggest project that I've worked in. We had like over 300 people working on a single project, and I felt that, like, looking at Bangalore, New Zealand, and the US, I personally, my personal opinion, that the most process-oriented country in achieving their targets is the Ministry in New Zealand, even more than the private companies in India. US, I felt, was a bit, what do you call, like, it is pretty old and slightly old. Like, they are very slow to react, but here they are very much process oriented. They are very fast in change, and they are very focused on the quality. So I did notice a lot of difference between the three countries.
Interesting that you say that. Manish, you want to grab a glass of water if you want?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So interesting that you say that a country like New Zealand is very process oriented, because that's what we've heard of that country. My father spent some time in that country, and you share a lot of good things about governance there. And it would be the opposite if we were to look at the other countries. The government usually is looked at as very sloppy, big,
Yes.
not agile, very slow in taking decisions, very bureaucratic. There are so many, boxes that you have to check. What sets the government of New Zealand apart from what you've seen? You've worked with them now. What sets them apart?
I think they are very transparent in what they do, and they are very straightforward, but they are also very relaxed in the sense that they expect you to finish your work, and but they do not put so much pressure on you that you buckle. Like, they are able to somehow manage it really well. They have the right people for the right job. That's what I think that is there. And they're very transparent in the sense that there's a lot of accountability. So if someone does not do their job well, there's someone accountable for it. So I think that really matters. The US wasn't bad too in that sense either, but just that the process wasn't really great there. Like, everyone was trying to do everything, and things didn't move as quickly as we wanted.
And what about the leadership, particularly the Prime Minister? Because she's looked up to, she's followed, she's so popular around the world.
Yes, she's like someone that even I just came here recently, and I was so impressed with a leader like her, because I felt that she tries to be very empathetic towards all communities, and she takes care of her people, even though, like, here we have a lot of people who says that we should close down the border, like prevent anyone coming in because now we are safe. But the government is so focused on its people, and they ensure that everyone is taken care of well. Yeah, so she's really good, and I think it's like she's a leader the world can look up to.
What's the one or two or three leadership qualities that you've picked up from her and you'd like to implement in your life?
Yeah, for me, like one thing is like treat everyone as a human, be empathetic towards everyone. That's one thing I really admire about her. Second thing that I really would want to be like her is to communicate very effectively and be precise and clearly. I think those are the two main qualities that I think I would like to imbibe from her.
Have you had a chance to meet her, have a chat with her?
No, no, no. Hopefully someday. I heard you can just find her walking into banks and stuff like that, and she talks to anyone and everyone. So hopefully someday I'll get to meet her.
Right. If you're joining us right now, we're in conversation with Manish Chhetri. He is he leads a technical team working on COVID income relief payment at the ministry in Auckland, New Zealand. The project was set up to provide direct cash benefits to individuals who lost their jobs due to coronavirus. And this is one of the projects which is at the forefront, leading to the country being coronavirus free. New Zealand at this point is the only country which has managed to defeat coronavirus. So Manish has been talking to us about his experience, about his journey, about what the what the entire process to get COVID free really entailed for New Zealand. So if you're joining us right now, might also be interesting. If you have any questions, you can put it in the comment section, and I'll take that question to Manish. So, Manish, overall, when you look at the way New Zealand defeated COVID, you said that the government was able to move swiftly. It's a very lean, fast, process-oriented government. When you did that, and you say process-oriented, in what ways can you, break it down for us? How does the government react to situations like this?
In the sense that what I would say is like the government here, one law applies for all. There is no difference between a politician versus a commoner. So when the health ministry defied he just went biking during the lockdown and he was demoted, right? So he just went biking for some, I think, 20 kilometers or something out of his house during the lockdown when it was not allowed. He was demoted from the ministry. So, like, the laws are the same for everybody here. That is one thing. So that helped. The second thing is when I talk about process, more than the process, it's the communication from the ministry that happened every day. And so that was very useful to us. And I think the whole country used to tune in at that exact time. And everyone knew what was expected out of them every day. And that was like drilled into our minds at every day at 1 p.m. that we are supposed to do this. This is our case number. These are the risks that we are facing. And this is what we are doing to mitigate that. So these are the two critical things that I saw, that one law for all and very effective communication. And in terms of process, though there have been some mishaps at the border, but they have been able to put like certain systems, checks and balances in place that we have coronavirus cases at the border right now, but those are all in quarantine, and those are all new coronavirus cases that have come in from the repatriation flights. But yes, the government has certainly put in some processes to handle all that. And they have the 3-day testing, the 12-day testing once a person comes in to the facility. And that is being managed by the Air Force folks, I think. So, yeah, so they put in a lot of checks and balances and a lot of systems in place, and everyone is accountable for something.
Right. And you've lived through this lockdown. I know you're working very hard to get the payment direct cash benefit transfer of the New Zealand government in place. But what was your experience like living in a country which is very disciplined when it comes to following a government's mandate like New Zealand?
So we were essentially in lockdown, and we were new to the country. We had luckily just moved into a place here. So, but then there were obviously some folks who were breaking the lockdown rules, like there's always everywhere, all around the world. People were breaking the lockdown, but yeah, the government would send them off the warning, but nothing more than that. And every store was very disciplined in ensuring that whenever we have to buy groceries, it was all contactless. So that was something new for me. So we would order everything online. The groceries would be kept in a locker, and we go and pick it up. So that was good. And yeah, we didn't have any issues as such. It was pretty safe, and everything was pretty smooth.
You didn't break any rules?
Nope. We were very busy with the project. We were extremely busy, so we didn't get out, apart from groceries.
And how many hours were you working every day to get this system in place?
We would be like every day of the week, we were working about 16 to 17 hours every day. That's the effort the whole team put in. And I think it was spread across multiple teams because obviously there's the IT infrastructure and the other projects running side by side. So everybody contributed and everybody worked in a similar manner.
So how big was your team, and how did it all work?
So I think in total we had three teams working on this COVID project, and each team had about 15 to 16 people.
Okay. So Rajan Kaushal says, congratulations to Manish. You're making us proud. So grateful to you. It's from Sikkim. Subarna has a question. Hi Manish, do you think on tech or architectural infrastructure level, something like COVID income relief could be deployed in India? How could what could be some of the challenge, or how do you think it could be implemented?
So before I answer this question, I'd just like to give a small background on how New Zealand works. So when we have this new tracing app in India, right? Like where they can track the movements. So even the New Zealand government wanted to come out with a similar kind of app where you can track the movements of a person. But then they found that 5% of the people in the country do not have smartphones. So they did not go with this location-based tracking. So to implement something direct cash benefit kind of program in India, obviously we need bank accounts for everybody. But so is that viable in India? That would be the first question. How many people do not have bank accounts? And how many people can actually apply, like are computer literate to apply for such applications, right? So that would be another factor. So looking at all this, probably it could be achieved by having intermediaries in between who can help translate the requirements to someone applying for such benefits. But yes, it would be a challenge, but I'm sure it could be done.
Yeah,
but
now that
it is
we have,
not big a challenge.
yeah, it's huge simply because of the number of people. But then the government has, in a way, yeah, it has the bank accounts and everything in place. You've lived away from Sikkim for a long time. What ties you to home, to Sikkim?
Probably the momos we make here. Yeah, probably it's the food. Like we miss the food back home.
Okay, what else? What do you remember of home? What do you like? Your friends, your school?
I studied in Darjeeling. So yeah, I didn't study in Sikkim, so I studied in Darjeeling. But yeah, Sikkim is I don't know. I just miss the place. Like just walking around MG Road, which is what we do. So yeah, just miss the place in general, and the family is there. So I don't think there can be any bigger draw than that.
Would you like to come back one day? You said initially that you'd like, and if you do come back, what do you want to do?
Yeah, probably I would like to come back, and I did try to come back before, but that didn't work out so well. But yeah, I would certainly like to come back. Probably, I would like to set up my own IT product business, not a service, because it is hard for services in Sikkim. But yeah, certainly like to set up some product company in Sikkim in the future.
Probably when the broadband is better, yeah, in Sikkim. So we really need good internet there for you to be able to set up anything.
Yes, that is another big challenge in Sikkim. Like whenever I have to work from whenever I was home and I had to log in remote, I had to keep going to different people's houses looking for a good broadband network. So yes, it's been a challenge that way. It is a challenge.
Okay. So on East Mojo, you usually get a lot of young people watching us all the time. And I guess some of them will aspire to be where you are today, working with the government in such a very crucial project. What advice or message do you have for them?
Mm, the only advice is to work hard and to take every difficulty as an opportunity in learning. That's what I found, because this, and even in my previous project, whenever things have got difficult, I've always learned a lot of new things and a lot of things that have helped me in the way.
So we're going to mix tech now to some of the personal questions. So viewers, we're going to be mixing up a lot of questions. So now I'm going to be back with the technical question that I have for Manish. Um, so New Zealand fighting COVID, what role did tech play in COVID, fighting COVID-19 in the country?
Yes, so it did a lot. So in fighting COVID-19, or actually it was more inclined towards the economy, so helping the economy. So when businesses were like shut down during the lockdown, the government had to pay the businesses again cash benefits so that they don't fire their employees. So we developed systems at the ministry to help businesses evaluate how much were they eligible for. So that was again another cash benefit program the government had to dole out, and that was again done in the ministry. So once that got over, then we had this income relief payment for regular people who lost their jobs due to COVID, helping them stay afloat. So that is another thing that tech played. And then the contact tracing app, which is not a location based, but more of a QR code scanning kind of a system. The government wasn't very keen on the contact tracing with a location based because of the privacy rules in the country. So, yeah, so I think those were the three major areas where tech played a role, helping businesses and people stay afloat during these times.
Right. Let's look at your program now that you worked on the income relief. Uh, I pick up that what about 40,000 people in New Zealand lost their jobs over a month during the first wave of
Right.
unemployment. Now there's going to be more, I guess, double that. I don't know. From
Yeah, the
June to
projection is
August,
about 350,000.
350,000. So your work becomes more and more and more relevant, and it is going to have a huge impact on so many lives. Um, Tell us about the program more in detail, and also your contribution to this to it.
So basically, what the program does is it asks the user a certain series of questions, and once they answer those series of questions, we evaluate the eligibility of the person who's applying. The system evaluates their eligibility, and once the system determines that, okay, this person is eligible to receive certain cash benefits from the government, so what happens is we store those details in our system, and then there's another user-facing application where the user can upload all the required documents so that someone at the backend can check and validate those documents, their ID proof, their bank account, their salary statements, and all that stuff. So once the user uploads this document, we consider that application as complete. And then someone sitting in the back office, once they validate and all is good, at a click of a button, the bank information details and the eligibility details are sent to a third-party system, which makes the payment out to the client. So it is all very streamlined and very straightforward system. So
So now, yeah, go on.
yeah, so this was a completely new product which had to be developed. So, and my role was in leading that team to develop that new product on top of an existing system.
And was execution a problem? Was it easy to be able to execute it on the ground to see maximum number of people were using it?
Uh, the execution on the ground. So since we have an existing benefit system in place, since the country already had an existing benefit system in place, so people knew what they had to do. So on the ground, there wasn't anything else that had to be done except, as I told you, that the 1 p.m. briefing that happens every day. So the government would announce at that time that there's something new in place. So people who have lost their jobs can go in and apply for it.
So if we were to bring, now your dream is to come back to Sikkim. If you were to come back to Sikkim and bring about some change, which we all dream about, I guess that's the idealistic dream all of us have, is to come back and make a change through tech. And if you were to make changes through tech, what are the fields that you'd want to work in, and what kind of changes and impact on the ground would you like to see?
So if I have to make changes in tech, it should have to consider the demographics of how Sikkim works and what are the different kind of people and the connectivity issues that we have in Sikkim. So I thought about this long back. So if I have to come back to Sikkim, I would want to build something that is useful to the population to interact with the government in a better manner. But that was something that I tried to do in 2010, 2010. It didn't work out. So yeah, I'll see when the time comes.
So why didn't it work out?
Because I think there was too much of red tapeism at that point of time. So things did not work out, and I was working in New Zealand at that time, and I thought that I should come back to Sikkim, and I thought it was very interesting projects that were proposed, went through a lot of presentations, but then there was some kind of red tapeism in the way, which I do not want to discuss any further.
That's the problem, isn't it? That's what kills some great ideas. Red tapeism, of course, is one of the key things what kills great ideas. It's the will of the government. If the government wants to do it, they will do it, and they can do it. It's not like we've not seen it. Chandrababu Naidu initially was able to implement a lot of processes that streamlined government and the people contact, and made it much smoother, much better. When it comes to even the most simple things like paying a bill, right? So they were able to streamline it. Now you're saying that yes, there is red tapeism, but it will take some time. So is this the only project that you want to do? What about farmers? I'm talking about farmers not just in Sikkim, but across India. When it comes to connecting with them, I know there are a lot of software that do that, getting them the right price for their produce. Is that another area that you could have some ideas on?
I think I thought about that, but I think ITC already has a similar kind of project that is in place. So basically connecting the farmers to the real market. So I think ITC is already set up like hubs in different villages where, because again, we have to see the challenges of a farmer, that they cannot use the system effectively even now, I suppose. So I know that ITC has set up a lot of hubs in different villages in India where a farmer could go and talk to a person who would help them out with the system. So so those ideas, I thought about it long back. And yes, but ITC had already done them. They did it at a later point, but yes, they did it. For Sikkim, sorry?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Go on.
Yeah, for Sikkim, I had thought of certain projects, and I had considered all the facts, including the amount of traffic on the road that we have now in Sikkim. And in 2010, when I had proposed projects, it had taken into the connectivity issues, the traffic issues. So basically, I proposed projects which would alleviate some of those problems. Yeah, but it didn't go through because of unknown reasons. Yeah, so I'll have to see. So probably I will build it as a standalone product and then come back or see how it goes in the future. Yeah.
Right now that the government has changed, there's a new government. Perhaps we could, get this idea back again. Manish, that will be a fantastic idea for the state of Sikkim. Arpana has a question. She says, what accountability mechanism do governments have there, particularly on managing the funds and budget? What recommendation do you have for our governments in Nepal and India?
Okay, so this was way back in 2010. Just an incident. This was a headline in a paper in New Zealand when I was here. So I remember very clearly that John Key was the Prime Minister of New Zealand at that time, and he had gone on a foreign trip. And what happened during that trip is like he spent, so it looked like there's budget allocated for each trip, and he spent $10 over budget during that trip, and that made it to the headlines. So, uh, what I'm trying to say here is the government is very much accountable to the people, and there's always an oversight committee for everything which is independent of the government. And I think we have a similar body in India, the controller, the CAG, but I do not know like how many reports does that generate. But here it is very clear, and opposition have access to the data that the oversight committee always generates. So I think that those checks and balances are very important in the system. So every action the government takes, there has to be an oversight committee. Every bill a government passes, there has to be an oversight committee to see what is the impact, and that has to be given to the opposition party to basically ask their questions in the House.
Right. In India too, we do have our watchdogs, not just in central government, but across. But then how much of it is really actioned, after all these reports come out? And how long does justice really reach? So those are questions that will always be there. Now, that's also a challenge. When you say that a government is transparent, it follows all rules. Even a $10 spent by a prime minister has to be accounted for and questioned.
Yes.
Doesn't that impede decision making? Doesn't that? So you said that the government is very process oriented, is very swift in taking decisions.
Yes.
At the same time, you have to follow and check all these boxes. So doesn't it impede one decision making and execution on the ground?
Probably because they are so used to following the system, they know what exactly they have to do and what are the limits. So I do not think, or maybe it does at a higher level. I wouldn't know, but even in spite of that, the government seems to be like very agile, like you said. So I really do not think it has impacted that much.
Right, towards the end now.
Sorry?
Yeah. So we have about 7 minutes to go before the interview ends. Just take us back to your journey. You said you spent a lot of time in Darjeeling studying in a school.
Right.
So from there to what you are today, if you could take us through the important highlights of your life that our viewers might want to listen to.
So I started my schooling, like my first grade in TNA in Gangtok, but obviously I wasn't a very studious student at that point of time, always getting into fights and stuff like that in school. So my parents pulled me out and put me to St. Paul's, Darjeeling. And there I was doing just fine till I reached grade 6. And then everything started to go downhill. I wasn't very interested in studies. I wasn't focused at all. I nearly flunked my class. And yeah, I think that was one of the key turning points. So I'd come home for the Dasai holidays at that point. And my dad he's always been very strict about things. And we were always like very scared of him. And whenever he was around, we were always studying. But then all that didn't affect me one bit. But that time when I came for the Shira holidays and I was about to repeat the class, like if I had failed in a couple of subjects more, I'd have to repeat the class. So that moment I still remember even till now. My mom cried for the first time. And that changed everything for me. And after that, I put in a lot of effort in everything I did. And yeah, so that's when actually I feel I transitioned. Yeah, that's the moment in my life when I transitioned around the Dashera festival of my 6th grade.
Which year was it?
That was in, I think, 1994, 94 or 93. 94, I think. Yeah, that's when everything changed for me.
Wow. So I think, Manish, your fighting is understandable because you come from a community a fighting community, no? You guys are supposed to
Yes.
be the warrior community,
Yes.
so the fighting is understandable. I guess what is not understandable is what took you to really excel in your studies, and why didn't you do it before? What was that didn't agree with you when it came to education?
I don't know. Probably I was just not interested. I was having too much fun in school. Yeah, and I do not know why that was such a strong trigger for me. Like when my mom cried, I still remember that very much. That the room was dark, my mom cried, and she told me to please study. That's all she told me, and that changed a lot for me. So I do not know what happened that day, but yeah, things changed. Things turned around from that day onwards. I went back to school a lot more determined. And I remember the winter holidays. I studied all through the winters, prepared for my seventh grade even before I got to class. And yeah, when I went back to school, everything was new. It was brand new for me.
So there's no stopping. So you went from a bad student to the class topper, or you went from a
No,
bad student to average student to a class topper?
no. So I was like near the probably in the last. I was in the bottom three in grade six, but by the time I reached like seventh grade, I came and started coming in the top five, and I always like was at the top after that. Tried to stay there.
Wow. For me, it was opposite. I was always in the top four when I started off in my younger years. But as I grew, I started to descend to the lower levels. And I think by the time I passed out, till I found my calling, I was pretty much at the lowest end, and just hanging by because I just didn't agree with the education system. And I was quite a rebel at that point. And I said, if you're not able to make me understand why x plus y equals to z, then I'm not going to study. So that was the breaking point for me, and to make me a journalist. Yeah. So and your college, how was it?
So yeah, so I studied in Manipal, in Sikkim, Manipal, and I was actually studying electronics and communications there. But then we had this computer teacher. So I think it requires a teacher who basically uh, generates that interest in you. So it requires a really good teacher. And we had a teacher from Bangalore, I think, Mr. Biradar. He was extremely strict, but he was very good at the same time. So he helped me like generate a lot of interest in computer science, and that's when I moved branches. And yeah, that's how I continued there.
Right. Manish, with that, we've come to the end of the conversation. We've completely run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us here on East Mojo, and thank you, I guess, from the government of New Zealand for what you've done for them. They should be happy, and all the best for the future. We are hoping to see you in Sikkim to make some changes in the government with tech and bringing more impact. Thank you, Manish.
Thanks a lot, Karma. It was nice talking to you. Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you.
Sure.
And to our viewers, thank you so much for joining in on this conversation. Calling Home will be back again next week with another brilliant story. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.